Welcome to the Deep Dive, everybody. This week, well, we're diving into White House actions, and there are a lot of them.
A lot.
Yeah, executive orders.
Yeah.
Elon Musk's DOGE is everywhere, and then there's that whole Gaza thing.
Yeah. It's been
It's been a busy week,
a very busy week.
so we're going to try to sift through all this and extract what you need to know.
Exactly. Try to make sense of it all
Yeah.
and figure out the implications.
Yeah, what does it all mean for you?
Exactly.
So maybe we can start with one of the things that is really kind of like blown up all over the place, which is
DOGE, yeah,
DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency.
everywhere.
They're everywhere, and it seems like Trump is just a huge supporter.
He loves it, yeah.
Yeah, he loves DOGE, and they are cutting costs. I mean, that's like their
That's the mandate, cut costs across the board
cut.
as much as possible.
But some of the articles that we're looking at are raising some questions about maybe how they're doing that.
Yeah, and whether it's even legal.
Yeah.
Some of the sources we're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to say, like, okay, we're going to streamline and we're going to cut, but it's another thing when they're, like, going in and rifling through people's
Yeah, they're going through filing cabinets.
and, like, ignoring
Ignoring employees.
you know what I mean? Like,
It's a little,
yeah, they're, like, above the law.
yeah, and this isn't just like office supplies we're talking about here.
Right.
We're talking about access to really sensitive
Yeah.
personal data,
Like student loan information,
student loan information,
Medicare records.
Medicare, Medicaid data.
Yeah.
We're talking about millions of Americans.
And, like, is there even any legal framework for how they're supposed to
Yeah.
be handling all this data?
Yeah. Who's overseeing them? What are the rules? We don't know.
It's a little scary.
Yeah. A little Big Brother-ish.
Yeah, and it seems like they overstepped their bounds in other ways, too.
In many ways, yeah.
Like, didn't they just shut down USAI?
They did, yeah.
Like, the entire thing.
The whole thing.
Why? On, just like that.
So USA, the U.S. Agency for International Development,
USA?
shut down this week.
This week?
Employees are locked out of their offices.
Locked out, yeah.
All the programs around the world that they were running
Grinding to a halt.
just stopped.
Yeah.
And Musk, it seems like he's like,
He's behind a lot of this.
yeah, he's the driving force.
A lot of these DOGE initiatives.
Yeah. And he said that USAID was a ball of worms.
Yeah, a ball of worms.
They needed to be fed to the wood chipper.
Fed to the wood chipper, that's a quote.
I mean, I guess I can kind of see where he's coming from. Like,
Yeah.
I get wanting to cut government spending and all, but
Yeah.
isn't there, like, a process for this?
Right, exactly.
Like, you can't just, like, walk in and be like, all right, everybody out, we're shutting this down.
Yeah, I mean,
This has to go through Congress, right?
well, that's the question, right?
Right.
The Constitution gives Congress the power
Uh-huh.
to appropriate the funds.
And oversee government agencies. The president can't just unilaterally
Right.
shut down an agency like USAID
So what you're saying is
without congressional approval,
DOGE and the president
potentially.
might be acting illegally.
Yeah, that's what a lot of legal experts are
Uh-huh.
saying. Yeah.
Okay.
The sources we have suggest that DOGE is operating in a legal gray area,
A gray area.
if not outright breaking the law.
Wow.
And it's not just USAID.
Okay.
They've also targeted the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau,
The CFPB
or CFPB, yeah,
that was created too.
which was created to protect consumers
Right.
from predatory lending practices.
Yeah.
So shutting down these agencies without due process
Yeah.
raises serious concerns about the rule of law
Yeah.
and the balance of power.
It's like, I don't know, it's getting a little
That's a little,
dictatory, you know what I mean?
yeah, a little bit.
Like, you just shut things down that you don't like.
Yeah, no debate,
No oversight.
no oversight.
So speaking of actions that are maybe a little questionable,
Yeah.
let's talk about Trump's plan to just take over Gaza.
Yeah, this is a big one.
Yeah.
Perhaps the most alarming
A big one.
development of the week
Yeah.
and the one with the most potential for backlash.
International backlash.
Internationally, yeah.
Yeah.
Trump announced that the U.S. will just own Gaza.
We're just going to own it.
Own it, yep.
Wow.
And that he plans to relocate 2 million Palestinians.
2 million.
2 million people.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
Wow.
He claims they'll have much better housing elsewhere,
Oh.
but the details are very vague.
Right.
It's unclear where they would go or what would happen to their land
Yeah.
and their property.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge
It's an enormous undertaking.
undertaking.
Yeah.
Wow. So what's the reaction been like?
Well, from what we're seeing in the sources,
Okay.
a lot of
Shock.
shock, disbelief,
Yeah.
particularly from Egypt and Jordan.
Okay, yeah, they're right there.
They're the neighbors.
Yeah.
They're worried about the potential for mass displacement,
Right.
instability in the region,
Yeah.
and a humanitarian crisis.
Yeah, this just seems so
It's reckless.
reckless, right? It's like, okay, I get wanting to make things more efficient, but this is like next level.
Yeah, it feels like they're not even trying to follow the rules anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's a disregard for norms, for procedures,
Yeah.
potentially even the law,
So DOGE might be operating illegally.
possibly.
The Gaza plan is causing all this international uproar.
Yeah, not a good look.
So, like, what else has happened this week? Because it feels like there's just been a constant barrage of news.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
Didn't Trump also sign some executive orders?
Oh, yeah, a bunch.
Like, what were those about?
Well, one that's causing a lot of discussion
Okay.
is the one on education,
Education. Okay.
which aims to ban diversity programs
Okay.
and what the administration is calling radical indoctrination.
Radical indoctrination. What
Yeah.
does that even mean?
It's a very broad term.
Yeah.
Critics say it's being used to stifle open discussion and to silence dissenting viewpoints in schools.
So, like, you can't teach certain things.
Yeah, potentially.
Wow.
And the order also calls for promoting what they're calling patriotic education,
Patriotic education.
which some worry could lead to politicizing the curriculum.
Okay. Yeah, I see where they're coming from.
Yeah.
So, anything else?
Oh, yeah, there's more.
Oh, wow.
He also signed an executive order on transgender athletes.
Oh, right. Yeah.
This one bars transgender athletes from competing in women's sports.
And that was signed on.
Ironically, National Girls and Women in Sports Day.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the timing on that just seems so...
A little pointed, perhaps.
Mm.
Deliberate.
Yeah, deliberate.
Yeah.
Okay, so are these executive orders, are they facing any pushback?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
There are already lawsuits challenging their legality, arguing that they're discriminatory
Okay.
and violate the rights of transgender students.
Yeah. Okay.
And this isn't the only executive order facing pushback from the courts.
Okay.
A judge already blocked Trump's order attempting to limit birthright citizenship.
Oh, wow.
And another judge has blocked the order affecting transgender inmates in federal prisons.
So it seems like the judicial branch is, like, pushing back a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Checks and balances.
Yeah, checks and balances.
That work.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So we're only, like, halfway through this deep dive, and there's still a lot to cover.
We've got a lot more to unpack.
But I think before we jump into the rest of it,
Yeah.
let's take a moment to kind of, like, think about what we've learned so far.
Yeah, reflect a little.
Yeah, it's been a lot, right?
It's been a lot to process.
Yeah.
A very busy week in the White House.
Yeah, and I think what's really important to remember is that this isn't just another crazy week in politics.
It's not just a news cycle.
Yeah, this stuff actually has the potential to, like, really reshape our government and our society and
Exactly.
our place in the world.
The implications are huge.
Yeah.
We're talking long-term consequences here.
Yeah, and we're going to get into all of that after the break.
We'll be right back.
So stay with us.
It's easy to get kind of caught up in the like day-to-day news cycle,
Yeah.
but it's really important to kind of like zoom out a little bit
Okay.
and look at the bigger picture.
Right.
So let's talk about the potential long-term consequences of all these actions.
Okay, yeah, like what precedents are being set?
Yeah, what are we looking at here? Well, one of the biggest things I think is the potential erosion of democratic norms
Okay.
and the rule of law.
Right.
You know, if the president can just ignore Congress
Right.
and shut down agencies he doesn't like,
Right.
what's to stop future presidents from doing the same thing?
Right. It doesn't matter what party they're from.
Exactly, and that's what's so scary about this.
It's like setting a really bad precedent.
A very dangerous precedent for executive overreach.
Yeah, and what about the impact on, like, individual rights?
Oh, that's a huge one.
Yeah, we talked about DOGE having access to all that personal data.
Yeah, student loans, Medicare, Medicaid,
Right.
all of it.
And then there are also, like, those executive orders that seem to be targeting specific groups,
Right.
like the transgender athlete ban
Yes.
and the crackdown on diversity programs.
Hugely controversial.
So what are the implications of that?
Well, I mean, there are serious concerns about discrimination
Okay.
and the targeting of marginalized communities.
Right.
The transgender athlete ban, for example,
Right.
it not only denies transgender students the opportunity to participate in sports,
Right.
but it also sends a message that
Yeah.
they're not fully accepted or valued by society.
Yeah, it makes them feel less than.
Exactly, and that can have a devastating impact on
Yeah.
their mental health and well-being.
And then that education order, the one with all that vague language.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the one about radical indoctrination.
Yeah, that could have like a chilling effect on free speech
Absolutely.
and like open dialogue in schools.
Teachers might be afraid to talk about certain topics
Right.
for fear of being accused of pushing a political agenda.
Yeah, like what can you even talk about anymore?
That's the question, isn't it? And that kind of self-censorship is detrimental to education.
Right. Students need to be exposed to like a wide range of ideas.
A diversity of thought.
Yeah, they need to learn how to think critically.
Exactly. And this executive order could stifle that intellectual growth.
Yeah, it's like we're going backwards.
It's a concerning trend.
So we've also talked about the potential international fallout from some of these actions.
Yeah, like the Gaza plan
The Gaza plan.
and the withdrawal from the UN Human Rights Council.
Right. So what kind of like long-term damage could that do to America's reputation in the world?
Well, I mean, it's already causing significant damage.
Yep.
The Gaza plan has been met with widespread condemnation from world leaders and human rights organizations.
Okay.
It's being seen as a violation of international law
Yeah.
and a reckless disregard for human rights.
Yeah, I can see that.
And the withdrawal from the UN Human Rights Council,
Uh-huh.
that further isolates the U.S. on the world stage.
Right. It's like we're pulling away from the rest of the world.
Exactly, and it undermines our commitment to human rights principles.
So it makes you wonder, like, what is America's role in the world going to be if we keep going down this path?
Yeah, it's a big question.
Will we still be seen as, like, a reliable partner?
Defender of democracy?
Or will we be something else entirely?
It's hard to say, but these actions are definitely causing a shift
The shift.
in how other countries perceive the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, we used to be seen as, like, the predictable superpower.
It's a steady hand.
The steady hand, the one you could count on.
And now,
Now it's like, who knows?
it's unpredictable.
Yeah.
And that has implications for everything.
Yeah.
Trade, diplomacy, security, you name it.
Yeah, so we've got, like, potential constitutional crises brewing,
Mm-hmm.
erosion of individual rights,
Yeah.
damage to our international standing.
It's a lot.
Okay, what about the economy?
Oh, well, the economic implications are huge.
Okay.
I mean, shutting down agencies like USAI and the CFPB,
Right.
that has immediate economic consequences.
Okay.
USIA, they support development projects all over the world,
Right.
creating jobs, fostering economic growth.
Right.
And the CFPB protects consumers from predatory lending practices,
Right. Yeah.
which helps to stabilize the financial system.
Okay.
So disrupting these agencies has a ripple effect
Yeah.
that can be felt globally.
Wow. And what about like the long-term economic impact of DOGE and all their cost-cutting measures?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Like, could that end up hurting us in the long run?
It's definitely possible.
Okay.
I mean, efficiency is important,
Yeah, of course.
but slashing government spending without careful consideration,
All right.
that can lead to unintended consequences.
Right.
It could result in cuts to essential services,
Huh.
job losses,
Yeah.
and a decline in the quality of life for a lot of Americans.
It's like trading short-term gains for long-term pain.
Exactly.
But, I mean, what about the argument that DOGE is just trying to eliminate waste?
Sure.
Like, make the government more efficient?
Right.
Isn't that a good thing?
Well, of course, efficiency is a good thing.
Right.
But not at the expense of the law or the rights of individuals.
Right.
The problem with DOGE is not their stated mission.
Okay.
It's their methods.
Okay.
They're operating with a lack of transparency
Okay.
and accountability,
Mhm.
and their actions raise serious questions about their respect for the law
Right.
and democratic processes.
It's like they've been given a chainsaw to prune a bonsai tree.
That's a great analogy.
Like, the intention might be good,
Yeah.
but the execution is disastrous.
It's a mess.
So I guess the question is, what does all of this mean for, like, the average American?
Yeah. Why should they care?
Yeah, why should they care about what's happening in the White House?
Especially if they don't work for the government or like directly benefit from these programs.
Right.
Well, because these actions have the potential to affect every aspect of our lives.
Really?
Absolutely.
Wow.
They impact our economy, our security, our environment, our healthcare, our education, even our basic freedoms.
So it's not just about politics.
It's not just some abstract political game.
Yeah.
It has real-world consequences for all of us.
We're not just talking about, like, policy debates.
Right.
We're talking about, like a potential shift in the balance of power.
Yeah, a weakening of democratic institutions.
And like a disregard for the values that have always defined America.
Exactly, and that's why it's so important to pay attention,
Okay.
to ask questions,
Yeah.
to hold our leaders accountable. We
Right.
can't just be passive observers.
Right.
We need to be active citizens
Yeah.
who demand accountability, transparency,
Yep.
and a government that represents the interests of all Americans,
America.
not just a select few.
It feels like we're at like a turning point.
It does, doesn't it?
The actions that have been taken this week
Yeah.
could have a ripple effect for years to come,
Absolutely.
shaping the future of our country.
And our place in the world?
It's a little
It's
scary.
a sobering thought.
Yeah.
But it's also a call to action.
Okay.
We can't just sit back and watch as our democracy is eroded.
Right.
We need to engage.
Okay.
We need to speak out.
Yeah.
And we need to fight for the values we believe in.
Well said.
Thanks.
So before we wrap up, there's one more piece of this crazy week that we need to address,
Oh, yeah.
which is the president's offer of refugee status to oppressed white South Africans.
Right. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah, it's kind of gotten lost in the shuffle a little bit.
Yeah, with everything else going on.
Yeah, with the DOGE and Gaza and all of that.
It's been a busy week.
But it's still a really important story.
It is, and it speaks volumes about the administration's worldview.
Okay, so let's dive into that. We'll unpack the whole South Africa saga.
Okay.
And then we'll wrap up with some final thoughts
Yeah.
about what this week tells us about the state of American politics.
The challenges we face as a nation.
Yeah, stick with us. Okay, so we're back. And before we wrap up this deep dive into, well, this crazy week, let's talk about that story about Trump offering refugee status to white South Africans.
Yeah, this one's interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of flown under the radar a little bit with everything else that's going on.
With DOGE and Gaza, yeah, it's easy to miss this one.
But it's still an important story, I think.
It is, and it kind of gives us a glimpse into how the administration views the world.
Okay, so what happened exactly?
Well, Trump, he offered refugee status to white South Africans.
Okay.
He said they were facing persecution and needed protection.
Okay.
But the South African government and a lot of South Africans themselves pushed back pretty hard on that.
Okay, so what are they saying?
Well, they're basically saying that white South Africans, yeah, they're facing economic challenges, like
Yeah.
a lot of people in the country,
Okay.
but they're not facing systematic persecution.
Okay.
They still have a lot of wealth and power in South Africa.
Okay.
And the South African government's basically saying that Trump's offer is based on, well, a misrepresentation of what's actually happening there.
So it's interesting because this offer of refugee status, I mean, it seems to clash with the administration's whole stance on immigration, right?
Yeah, which has been to restrict immigration,
Right.
especially from non-European countries.
Yeah.
So it does seem a little contradictory.
Yeah.
And it's been pointed out that, you know, this offer to white South Africans comes at a time when the administration is making it really hard for refugees from other parts of the world,
Sure.
places where they're facing real persecution and danger
Yeah.
to seek asylum in the United States.
It seems like a double standard.
It does, doesn't it?
Like who deserves refuge and who doesn't
Mm-hmm.
is based on, I don't know, race and where they come from.
That's what a lot of critics are saying, that it's less about humanitarian concern
Okay.
and more about appealing to a specific political base,
Okay.
a base that sees white people as being under threat globally.
So it's not just about South Africa then.
No, it's about how this action fits into this bigger picture.
Right.
This pattern of rhetoric and policies
Yeah.
that seems to prioritize certain groups over others.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a window into their worldview.
Exactly.
And that worldview is kind of shaping everything.
From domestic policy to foreign policy to, you know, who gets to come to America?
Yeah. Okay, so here we are at the end of another deep dive.
There's a lot.
There's a lot this week.
A lot to unpack.
We covered DOGE's rise, the Gaza plan, all those executive orders.
The South Africa stories.
South Africa, yeah. It's been a lot to take in.
It really has. And I think the main takeaway from all of this is that we're seeing a really big change in American politics. I mean, these actions, they're not just isolated incidents.
Yeah.
This is a shift in how powers is being used, how decisions are being made, and what values are considered important.
It's like the old rules don't apply anymore.
Exactly.
And we don't know what the new rules are.
Or if there even are any rules.
Yeah, it's a little unsettling.
It is, and that's why it's so important to stay informed,
Okay.
to think critically,
Yeah.
and to participate in our democracy.
Right.
We can't just sit back and watch.
Right.
We need to be active citizens.
Yeah.
We need to demand accountability and transparency, and we
Yeah.
need a government that represents everyone,
All Americans.
not just a select few.
That's what the deep dive is all about, right? Giving you the knowledge you need to figure out these crazy times.
Exactly. We want to help you make sense of it all.
Yeah, we hope this episode helped you understand this crazy week a little bit better.
And given you some things to think about.
Yeah, and remember, knowledge is power.
It is.
And it's up to all of us to use that power wisely.
So keep exploring these issues.
Yeah.
Keep asking questions.
Yeah.
And keep having those important conversations.
The deep dive is just the beginning.
It is.
The real work starts now.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay informed.